Now, most folks figure July is for harvesting, not for planting. The garden's already full up, it's hotter than blazes out there, and who in their right mind is thinking about putting more seeds in the ground? Well, I am. 'Cause there's one crop I plant every single July, right smack in the heat of summer, and that one little planting turns right around and feeds my family clear through the fall, right on through the holidays, and all the way into March. That's 8 months of eating off of one hot July afternoon's worth of work. And I don't do a lick of canning or freezing to make it happen neither. So stick with me here, 'cause by the time we're done, I got a feeling you're going to want to go clear yourself a spot for this one too. So let me tell you what this magic crop actually is. It's winter squash. And for my money, the very best of the bunch is butternut. That tan, bell-shaped one you see stacked up at the grocery store. Now, right off the bat, that name trips people up. Winter squash. They hear it and think you grow the thing in the winter. You don't. You grow it all through the warm summer, and you harvest it in the fall. The reason they call it winter squash is 'cause it keeps. It stores. It'll sit on a shelf in your pantry the whole winter long without going bad on you. And that right there is the whole entire secret to how one little July planting feeds you clear till March. See, most vegetables you got to eat 'em within a few days of picking or they turn to mush. Or else you got to go through all the sweaty trouble of canning 'em and freezing 'em to put 'em by. But not this fella. A good butternut squash will keep for 4, 5, even 6 months, just sitting there on a shelf in a cool room. No jars, no freezer, no work at all. You grow a whole pile of 'em in the summer, you stack 'em up in the fall, and then you just eat 'em all winter long. It is about the closest thing there is to free winter groceries. Now here's why July is the perfect time to get it in the ground. And there's a few good reasons, so let me lay 'em out. First off, that squash seed just loves warm soil, and come July, your dirt is good and hot. So you poke a seed in, and it'll come busting up out of the ground in just a few days, quick as you please. None of that slow, sulky sprouting you fight with in cold spring soil. Second reason, July is right when a whole lot of your spring stuff is finishing up and clearing out. Your peas are done, your early lettuce has bolted and gone bitter, maybe you just pulled your garlic. So you got these nice empty spots opening up all over the garden, sitting there doing nothing, and that is the perfect place to tuck in a squash plant. And here's the third reason, and this one's a real sleeper that hardly anybody talks about. Planting in July helps you dodge one of the worst pests there is. There's a nasty little bug called the squash vine borer, and it just flat out wrecks spring-planted squash, bores its way right into the stem and kills the whole vine dead. But that bug does the bulk of its damage early in the season. So by waiting and planting in July, after that borer's already come and gone, your squash sails right on past the worst of it. So it ain't just that July works. July's actually the smart time to do it. Now I do got to be straight with you on the timing, 'cause it does depend some on where you live. A butternut squash needs itself a good long stretch of warm weather to finish up, somewhere around 90 to 100 days from seed to a ripe squash. So you want to count backward from your first fall frost, and just make sure you got enough runway to get there. If you live somewhere with a nice, long, warm fall, well, a July planting is just about perfect. Plenty of time to spare. But if your summers run short and that frost comes on early up where you're at, you got a couple of choices. Either get it in the ground first thing in July, don't you dawdle, or pick yourself one of the faster maturing varieties, one of the smaller squashes that finish up quicker. Just flip that seed packet over, look at the days to maturity number, count your days out, and you'll know for sure. Long warm season, you're golden. Short season, you just got to plan a little. And if your season's real short, here's a trick. You can start your squash seeds indoors in a few little pots a couple weeks ahead, and then set the young plants out come July for a head start. Now squash don't love being moved, so you got to be real gentle with them roots when you transplant 'em. But done careful, it can buy you those extra couple weeks you need to beat the... All right, so let's plant it. Now butternut ain't a fussy thing, but it does want a few things from you to grow a real crop. Number 1, full sun. 6-8 hours a day, and the more the better. Number 2, rich soil, 'cause this here is a hungry plant, a heavy feeder. So work yourself a good bunch of compost into the spot before you plant. And number 3, this is the big one, room. A whole lot of room. See, these squash vines ramble. They will run 10-15 feet across the ground before they're through with you. So you either give them a big old open area to sprawl out in, or, and this here's a neat trick for a smaller garden, you're growing straight up a good strong trellis or a fence, and just let them squash hang right off of it. Saves you a whole mess of space. To plant, you just poke a few seeds down about an inch deep into a little mound of soil. Old-timers call them mounds, hills. And you space your hills a good 3-4 feet apart. Water 'em in real good. And in that warm July soil, you'll see them little sprouts in under a week, I promise you. Once they're up and growing strong, thin it down to the 2 best plants per hill and turn 'em loose. Hey, quick one before we keep going. If you're liking this, do an old fella a kindness and tap that subscribe button down there. I share this kind of practical, put food on the table garden stuff every single week. Anyhow, now that it's in the ground, let's talk about growing it on through the rest of the summer. The good news here is, once your squash is up and rolling good, it near about takes care of its own self. Your main job is the water. Keep it deep and steady, an inch or 2 a week, and a good bit more than that when it's real hot, right down at the roots. Now them big broad leaves will wilt and flop over in the heat of the afternoon and give you a fright. But long as they perk right back up come evening, don't you worry one bit. That's just normal. Give it a little feed through the summer if your soil's on the poor side. Keep it happy and growing. Now one thing you do need to know, squash has got to have the bees. It makes separate boy flowers and girl flowers, you see, and a bee's got to carry that pollen from the one to the other before you get a squash at all. So plant a few flowers nearby to draw the bees on in, and lay off the bug sprays that'd kill 'em. If you see a whole lot of flowers but no squash starting to form, you can always play bee your own self with a little paintbrush of a morning. And keep half an eye out for a white, powdery-looking dust on the leaves come late summer. That's a mildew, real common on squash. But usually the plant's already made its squash by then, so it don't amount to much. Other than that, you mostly just sit back with your coffee and watch 'em grow. And grow they will. Now, harvest time. And getting this part right is exactly what makes them store good clear till spring. Your butternut is ready in the fall, once it's turned a deep, solid tan all over. No more green streaks left on it, and the skin's gone good and hard. Here's your test. Press your thumbnail into the skin of it. If it dents in easy, she ain't ready yet. Leave it be. If your nail can't hardly make a mark, it's done and ready to pick. Another good sign is that stem up top. When the stem where it joins the vine goes all dry and corky and brown, you know she's ripe. Now you want to get 'em all in before your first hard frost hits, 'cause a hard freeze will ruin their keeping quality. When you cut it off the vine, leave a good couple-inch stem on there like a little handle. But here's the thing, don't you ever carry or lift the squash by that stem, 'cause if it snaps off, that open spot left behind will rot on you in storage. And handle 'em gentle, treat 'em like eggs. Every bruise and every little nick is a spot that'll start to spoil down the road. Careful pickin' means long keepin'. Remember that. And here's the step that most folks skip right over, and it's the very one that makes 'em last all the way to March. You gotta cure 'em first. Now curing, all that means is you let them squash sit somewhere warm and dry for about 10 days, 2 weeks, right after you pick 'em. A sunny windowsill, a warm porch, a spot up near the ceiling where the heat gathers, anywhere warm. And what that does is it toughens the skin up into a good hard shell, and it heals over any little nicks and scratches. And would you believe, it actually makes the squash sweeter to eat, too. Then, after they're all cured up, you move 'em to their winter home. And that's a cool, dry, dark spot with just a little air moving through. Around 50, 60 degrees is just right. Think a basement, a cool closet, a pantry, an unheated back bedroom. Set 'em out so they're not touching one another. Give each one a little elbow room. And whatever you do, do not go putting 'em in the refrigerator. Too cold and too damp in there, and they'll rot on you. You cure 'em and store 'em right like that, and a butternut will keep you 4, 5, 6 months easy. Some of mine make it darn near a full year. That right there is your winter, sitting on a shelf. Now, a quick word on varieties, 'cause not every squash keeps the same, and it's worth knowing. Butternut, like I keep saying, is the champ. That's your long keeper, 4 to 6 months and then some, and that's why it's my number 1. A big Hubbard squash keeps a real long while too, though they get to be the size of a small dog, so you gotta have the room and a strong back. Spaghetti squash keeps good, a few months. Now on the other end, your acorn squash and your delicata, them are wonderful eatin', but they don't store near as long, just a month or 2, so you want to eat them ones up first, early in the winter, and save your butternuts and Hubbards for the long haul into spring. So if your whole aim is feeding yourself clear till March, you lean heavy on the butternut. It's built for the job. And oh, I'm telling you, there is nothing quite like it. Middle of February, snow piled up to the windowsills, not a green thing growing for miles in any direction, and I just walk on down to my pantry, and there's a whole long row of butternut squash sitting there, sweet and orange on the inside, just waiting on me. Roast it up with a little butter, make a big pot of soup out of it, mash it up like potatoes. My wife, she makes a squash soup that'll about bring a tear to your eye, and it goes all winter long, right up into March. And here's the real kicker for you. One single squash plant will give you several squash, and a handful of plants gives you a whole mess of them, more than you can rightly eat. I plant maybe a half a dozen hills back in July, and it feeds the 2 of us the whole winter through, with plenty left over to hand out to the neighbors. I have not bought myself a winter squash at that grocery store in more years than I can count. And the eatin', it never gets old, 'cause you can do near anything with it. Roast it, mash it, soup it, cube it into a stew, even bake it into a pie sweet as pumpkin. Don't you toss them seeds either. Scoop 'em out, rinse 'em, toss 'em with a little salt, and roast 'em up for a snack. And if you do end up with more than even you can store, You can always roast and freeze some of the flesh, but honestly, stored right, you hardly ever need to. I still remember the first winter I did this proper. Come January, I went down to that pantry half expecting them to be rotted, 'cause I'd always been told you can't just keep vegetables laying around. And there they all were, hard and perfect, sweet as the day I picked 'em. I stood there grinning like a fool, felt like I'd gotten away with something. So let's tie the whole thing together. The crop is winter squash, and butternut's my pick of the litter. You're planted in July, right in that warm soil, in full sun and good rich dirt, and you give it plenty of room to ramble or a strong trellis to climb up. You water it steady on through the summer, let the bees do their business, and come fall you harvest 'em once the skin's good and hard and before that frost sets in. Then you cure 'em warm for a couple weeks and store 'em somewhere cool and dry and dark, and they will feed you right on through the winter and into March, with no canning, no freezing, and no fuss about it. One afternoon's planting, in the heat of July, and you've gone and set your table for half the year. Anyway, that's about it, really. This July, when everybody else has got their feet up thinking the season's over, you go on and clear yourself a little spot and put some squash in the ground. Come February, I promise you, you're going to be awful glad you did. Take care now, and I'll see you next time.